Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Basketball Maestros podcast. Thank you for joining us today. Today, we got some NFL stuff to talk about. The Super Bowl just took place this past weekend. Got some controversy towards the end of that Super Bowl, so we'll talk about that, give our thoughts on the game itself. Derek Carr has been making some rounds in the news about visiting the Saints for 2 days, about like a week ago, and recently getting released by the Raiders. So Derek Carr, one of the top quarterbacks, with a decision to make coming this offseason. And we'll be talking about the winners and losers of the NBA trade deadline, give our thoughts on that. And if we have time, I have this tier list that we can fill out about the top players of this season. So, yeah, starting off with the NFL, the Super Bowl took place this past weekend. Very exciting game. I thought it was really good. Heading into halftime, I thought the Eagles kind of had it wrapped up, but with Mahomes re-aggravating that high ankle sprain, I figured he was going to give it a go regardless because it's a Super
It's a
Bowl.
Super Bowl.
Yeah. Um, but in typical Mahomes fashion, they were able to just absolutely will their way back into this game, scoring 17 in the third quarter, I believe, and kind of flipping the game around and set up for a good finish in the fourth quarter. And then I'm sure everybody's aware of that holding call, and kind of giving my casual take. I think it was a bad call just because the game was great all the way up to that point, and just to have it kind of just rest on a holding call that, in my point of view, I don't think the holding affected the route. I think it was kind of early in the play, so I didn't really think it was a good call given the circumstances of it being the Super Bowl and just in the red zone, just a lot on the line. I think you just kind of let them play there. But then again, I'm a casual fan, so. But overall, I thought the Super Bowl was really good. I projected that the Eagles would win. I feel like a lot of people had the Eagles winning from what I saw on social media, but Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs get a Super Bowl win. And yeah, Patrick Mahomes was just gutsy that whole playoff run, suffering that ankle sprain in Jacksonville. Kind of looked rough. I didn't think he was going to play that game, but I think Chad Haney, their backup.
Chad Henne.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he got a couple snaps, but Patrick Mahomes ended up coming back, which was kind of surprising to me. But yeah, he was just great that whole playoff run, really gutting it out, re-aggravating it in the Super Bowl. Just gotta admire his will to win. So props to the Chiefs. It was a very entertaining Super Bowl. Yeah, it was one bad call you can argue at the end, but overall it was a pretty good Super Bowl. I expected it to be high scoring, and glad it was high scoring. So a lot of points up on the board. Can't be mad at it, but yeah, overall it was a pretty good game.
Oh yeah. I loved the game. I think it was really exciting. It was really fun to watch. Overall, my opinions on it. I did think the Chiefs would win, or I mean the Eagles. Had the Eagles winning. I think they had the better roster overall. And I think the biggest key to them winning that game was their defensive pass rush. You know, you guys like Hassan Reddick, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, and you kind of expected players like that to take over, and they didn't. You really have to give it up to that Chiefs offensive line in that second half, especially after Mahomes gets hurt. Like every little hit counts at that point, and they locked in 0 sacks all game, which is I think absolutely absurd for anyone who's been watching the Eagles all year. Um, and I think it's going to be really, it's just really surprising again because you don't really expect that to happen. And then obviously, second half, Chiefs I think played a perfect half of football. It was insane on the offensive side. Um, and for the Eagles, it was just kind of weird. Their defense, nothing really. I don't know those 2 touchdowns that everyone was talking about, two wide open guys. Um, you really have to question about Jonathan Gannon as a defensive coordinator of, what kind of happened there. Obviously, they allowed so many, four scoring drives. I'm pretty sure the Chiefs had that second half, and now you look at it, and Jonathan Gannon actually recently got hired by the Cardinals. So you have to kind of look at it. I didn't really like that hire, especially after that Super Bowl performance. He had the defense playing great all year, but something that I saw someone pointed out, which is actually pretty smart, and I didn't really notice it either, is if you look at the two offenses that were actually, competent, which were the Cowboys and Chiefs that they played, and both those games they lit up 40 points. So you kind of have to look at that. If you're a Cardinals fan, I'd be a little bit worried, but not to get too deep into that. Again, with the Super Bowl, I was really excited for this game overall. I think that both these teams matched up pretty well to each other. And I was just kind of excited to see what kind of legacy Mahomes would have after this game, because if he were to lose that game, he would be 1-2 in Super Bowls. Would have lost the past two he went to. So, a lot of people would have said, like, oh, he's just, he can only get there. He can't win it. Stuff like that. Just kind of just talking down on him, obviously. But I was really, like, impressed. And as a Raider fan, I've watched this guy for a while. I think everyone has too. But, when you're kind of in the same division as some of these quarterbacks, obviously you have to watch your favorite team play them twice. So just seeing him, toughen up, and just even after with a high ankle sprain too, just to come back in and have that mindset is, I think, absolutely absurd. And props to him again. And the Chiefs, I mean, Chiefs fans should be happy because that guy's going to dominate for years to come. And then you kind of look at it on the Eagles side. That call, I mean, everyone's talking about it. I I looked at which ref called it. It was the guy on the goal line, on the left side. If you're like looking at the Chiefs are going down the field on the left sideline. And from his POV, from where he threw the flag, I could get why he threw it, because from his point of view, it looked like a hold. But then again, I mean, at that moment in the Super Bowl, 2 minutes left, obviously, I think if he saw it from a different POV, I don't think he would have called it. But man, it just sucks that that's how it had to go down, because such an exciting game. Jalen Hurts was balling out. That Eagles offense, I think they go down and score, in my opinion, if they get another shot at it. But wow, I mean, that game overall was just crazy. Both quarterbacks balled out, and the NFL's in good hands, like we said. I mean, the amount of quarterbacks that could have been in this game this year in both conferences is just crazy. And I'm really excited to see what happens. But overall, I think this is one of the a top three Super Bowl in the past 10 years, in my humble opinion. But just very excited to see how the Chiefs can just keep this going. Next year, I think a lot of teams are going to be loading up again. You have the Chargers, who still have Herbert. You have the Jaguars, who have another year to kind of rebuild and, build up that offense and defense. Bills are always still there, the Bengals. And just, it's going to be exciting just to see how the AFC can kind of battle it out again. The AFC, in my opinion, is kind of like the West in the NBA right now, just to kind of relate that. You look at all the quarterbacks in the AFC right now, and it's just a lot different to the NFC QBs. And it's going to be definitely another exciting season. I want to have my little way too early Super Bowl prediction here, so I can, have this to kind of see what happens. I think the NFC representative next year will be the 49ers. I think coming back again, they're so dominant. That run game, the defense. I know DeMeco Ryans left this season to go to the Texans, but I still think that Kyle Shanahan is a really good coach, and they can lead that team again to a winning record. Now for the AFC, it's a little bit more tricky. Like I said, you have a lot more teams that could make it. I want to say I think it's either going to be the Bengals or the Chargers. Now I'm going to probably say it's going to be the Bengals. Bengals and Niners would be my pick. But my two dark horses, I'd say, are the Jags and the Chargers. Obviously, Chargers have a really talented roster. It's just all about putting it together in the postseason. They've choked, I mean, how many times? And with Herbert, I still think that that's a fair prediction. I think that guy is insanely talented. And I think that the Jaguars actually are a real dark horse to make the play or the Super Bowl because, I mean, almost beat the Chiefs. They get to run it back another year, Doug Peterson, and he gets to have another draft, have another free agency. Calvin Ridley reinstated or applied to go back to the league again this year. So I think that team can be really scary. I think if they get some pieces, that last draft they had was really good, and I'm really excited to see how this team can kind of evolve over these next couple of months and get even better. So definitely exciting times if you're a Jaguars fan. And yeah, so those are just kind of my thoughts on the Super Bowl. Really good game. Kind of played out how I expected it to. I think, once again, I thought the Eagles had that game in the bag, but Mahomes is Mahomes and just showed us again why he's truly, one of the best.
Yeah, so moving on to the NBA trade deadline winners and losers. Still reflecting on that trade deadline is still very, very crazy. So shout out to the Ringer for providing this article, but they started off with two losers. The first one being the Chicago Bulls, which is a team that decided to stand pat this past trade deadline, which one can argue is a pretty bad move. Um, with a big three of DeMar, Zach LaVine, and Vucevic. Hasn't exactly panned out in comparison to last year, but then again, Lonzo was kind of a key piece to their success, and he's missed all of this year so far, and I predict he's probably going to miss the rest of this year. Not sounding overly optimistic with Lonzo Ball, which is truly unlucky because he was, as I mentioned, a really key, vital part to what they were doing over there, and just to have him missing hurts a lot. And him and Caruso were just very good together last year, and they're very exciting to watch. But yeah, I definitely understand why people view them as a loser. They just needed to do something. They needed to pick a direction, whether that be tanking, blowing it up, moving off some pieces like Zach LaVine or Nikola Vucevic, who is a free agent this year. And I want to go out and predict that he's probably not going to come back. Hasn't been a great fit with Chicago. The defense is kind of an issue, and the Magic definitely came out of that trade as a winner. On paper, when it first happened, I thought the Bulls got a steal, but it just hasn't aged out very well. And they got some decisions to make because they definitely got some expiring deals. I believe Vucevic is expiring. I think Ayo Dosunmu is expiring. Basically all the veteran guys they have are expiring. DeMar has like a year or two left, and Levine's there for the long term. They got to figure out what to do with Lonzo. It's just overall not a great situation. I think it would have been best just to kind of move off some assets, specifically Vucevic, just to get some pieces back from that trade, because I think he's probably going to walk this offseason. But the Bulls are still in the playoff or play-in picture, I should say, and it's going to be interesting to see how they fare. They're currently a game behind the Wizards for the 10th spot, and it's going to be interesting to see because I don't think they'll make it out of the play-in. If they do, they'll get swept by whoever they play, honestly. And with a team that's pretty top heavy, with LaVine leading the way with 37 million and DeMar behind him with 27. Interested to see where they take this in the future, but yeah, standing pat wasn't the right move, and interested to see what they do moving forward. But Yeah, overall, not a good deadline for the Bulls, being, I believe, them and the Cavs were the two teams that didn't make any moves. But the Cavs obviously are a team that didn't really have to make any moves because they're obviously a really good team. But you want to give your thoughts on the Bulls?
Oh yeah, I'm extremely disappointed with that team. They, I think you kind of have to realize when, hey, something didn't work out, and it's either time to blow it up or, get pieces that can actually help. And just staying quiet at the deadline, I think, was just completely the wrong move. You have to look at it as look at your competitors right now in the East. And right now, I mean, you guys are not looking good at all with even getting into the playoffs right now. And
Mm-hmm.
when you look at it, they right after the deadline, they lost to the new look Nets, which in my opinion is just not very good. I don't know how that's even possible. I mean, obviously that they still have some really good pieces, but you'd expect with a team of DeRozan, Levine, Vucevic. Obviously, injuries are here and there. Lonzo's injured still. You just expect a team like that to kind of step it up. They lost to the Magic on Monday, which is also another you know red flag. And it's just this team had the potential, and they've definitely kind of dropped the ball. And you look at it, there's a chance that they may even not make the play-in. They're 26-31, a game out. And with teams like the Pacers and Magic, literally 2 games behind them, it's definitely time for this team to kind of lock in. And that's where I feel like you definitely could have made moves. I mean, the depth just really isn't there in my opinion outside of the starting lineup, and the starting lineup isn't even playing that good as well. Um, so I mean, maybe you get Westbrook, and maybe that helps. That's been getting reported. I saw that Billy Donovan wants to reunite with Westbrook, and it's just
Good.
like, oh Lord. But maybe that is that missing piece. But I just still would have loved to see this management be a little bit more aggressive and really kind of put it out there, like, hey, we're still trying to win, and I just do not get that from the Bulls right now.
Yeah.
So it just kind of is really disappointing, and their schedule isn't really the easiest going forward. So they're really going to have to kind of lock in here these next couple of weeks and see if they can really make that run.
Yeah, I'm looking at their contracts right now, and players for sure coming back next year are Levine, DeRozan. You have Lonzo, Caruso, Patrick Williams, Andre Drummond, Derek Jones Jr., and Dalen Terry, who's their rookie. And looking at Levine's contract, it's going to continue to go up. Currently at 37, but in the last year of his deal, he's going to be making 48 million. Currently not looking like a guy to be paid that much money, but we'll see. He's definitely got a lot of time to figure it out. But DeMar heading into expiring year next year, we'll see. Maybe they move him at the deadline next year or just stick it out. But interested to see if DeMar sticks there in Chicago, and if he does move, I'm interested to see where he goes moving forward. You have Lonzo making 20 mil next year and then 21 the year after that, which when he first got this contract, you thought it was a good value, and now it's not looking that way with his knee issues, which is obviously very concerning. But yeah, the Bulls definitely have to figure something out, and when Vucevic walks, which I think will happen, I'm interested to see how they fill that center spot. But yeah, the Bulls definitely were not the team given the privilege of not doing anything at the deadline. And now moving on, which they have another loser, which I kind of disagree with. They have the Toronto Raptors, which they were a team that many speculated that they were gonna move off their pieces like Fred Van Fleet, Gary Trent Jr., OG, maybe even Pascal. While they didn't move off any pieces, I don't necessarily view them as losers. because I think getting Jakob Pertl was a pretty big deal, and I think the issue with the Raptors has been trying to find that center, um, that starting center that's dependable for a good majority of the season. They've been kind of relying on Precious Achuya, who's been decent of recent, but not a guy that you want starting minutes for. And I think Jakob definitely fits that role. And I think they got him for a budget. And he had a big game against Orlando, I believe, yesterday. Um, I think Jakob definitely fits that center mold that they definitely need. A center that plays defense, can get rebounds, and doesn't necessarily have to demand the ball because you have Pascal, Fred Van Fleet, and all those guys. But yeah, putting up 30 and 9 on 88% efficiency is obviously very good. At 6 blocks as well, which is crazy. But yeah, I think Jakob definitely fits that role, making a return back in Canada, which I think that starting five is very solid. If they can make it into the play-in, I think they can maybe get a playoff spot. But who knows if they get into the actual playoffs, if they're able to really hang with the top seeds, which I don't think they can. But I think this starting five is a good step in the right direction. Now you got Fred Van Fleet and Gary Trent due for new contracts. We'll see how that works out in the offseason, if they're able to retain them or not. But keeping it on the deadline, I don't think they're losers, even though a lot of people wanted them to kind of trade off those guys like OG and Gary Trent. Those were kind of the two names that were thrown around a lot. But staying pat and getting Jakob Pertl is definitely not a loser from this deadline in my eyes. I think just solidifying that center spot, which is something they've been looking for a while now. I think that's good enough for them. I don't think it's anything to freak out about.
Yeah, I mean, the Raptors are kind of like in a weird spot, I feel like. Um, some guys, feel like they want to leave, some guys want to stay, and I think that you have that young core, so I'm not against blowing trading away pieces right now. I think you kind of just let it play out, in my opinion. Um, I really did kind of like the Jakob Pertl trade. I think that's honestly a really good move for them to get another big, and they didn't really have a solidified big in my opinion. So I think that's definitely something they could have used. Um, so I think overall, you look at their team and you still have Siakam and Van Fleet, and I think that this team is a legitimate, contender to actually make the playoffs with this move. In my opinion, I think that they can win out in the play-in and maybe take a game or two off one of the top seeds. But I think that's kind of their peak. So I just think the biggest thing with this team is I'm happy that they're not blowing it at like kind of freaking out and trading away players, and they're just going to kind of ride it out and just kind of see how this core works out. Because I mean, you look at most of their team, and they're still like in their 20s and their young 20s, so there's no reason to panic and say, "Oh my God, like we're not a top 3 seed right now. We need to blow it up." So I'm kind of happy that they kept it together, and I'm very excited to see um, where they can go in the next couple of years.
Yeah, Masai's not necessarily the guy who rebuilds. I don't think he's ever been through a rebuild, if I'm mistaken. But yeah, I think this was the right move. Just at least trying something just to see if you can get more out of this group moving forward. But I definitely can't complain about getting Jakob Pertl after the game he just had. But moving on, they list another interesting one, in my opinion. They have the Minnesota Timberwolves as a winner this trade deadline, which I kind of talked about in our last episode about how getting Mike Conley, while he's much older than D'Angelo Russell, and D'Angelo Russell was probably not going to stick around after this past year, or after this year, I should say. Um, it's interesting. I kind of go back and forth with this move. I think they're kind of trying to do damage control for that Rudy Gobert trade and just trying to make it work at all cost. And Mike Conley's a guy you can argue is probably a better fit than D'Angelo, just a guy who doesn't need the ball. While he was a good defender in his um, earlier years, probably not the case now. But then again, he's still a capable shooter, probably a serviceable defender. I don't know about his stats on the defensive end, but I think he's still serviceable, I would say. Maybe um, equal level of D'Angelo on defense. And I know I mentioned it last episode as well. He's just a floor general, a guy who can definitely keep a team together on the floor, be able to get the offense into their places and stuff like that. And he's played with Rudy a couple of years in Utah as well. And interested to see how that looks. It just came off a huge win against Dallas, which on the road, you had Luka and Kyrie go off. I believe Kyrie dropped like 26 in the fourth, which to be able to withstand that kind of fourth quarter is pretty impressive. While the Timberwolves didn't look pretty the first half of the year, they're starting to come around. 2 games above 500 in the 8th seed currently. And Karl-Anthony Towns, people are saying he's going to be returning very soon. I believe they're on a road trip and he's supposed to come back during this road trip. So we'll see. Didn't look pretty with him there. We'll see if they kind of figure things out. But man, that fit really just I'm just still not buying it. And with this move of moving off D'Angelo, it's kind of Ant just being that main focus and ball handler, I think, in Minnesota. So we'll see how that looks moving forward. But in terms of a winner, I'm kind of back and forth. I can see both arguments, but I think this move kind of just is something you look at the end of the year and kind of gauge it. I think it's kind of too early to see if Mike Conley's really that big of an upgrade over D'Angelo. We'll see, but Mike Conley's looked serviceable so far in his first couple of games in Minnesota. We'll see how it looks in a playoff setting if he's really able to help the Timberwolves in a big way. But yeah, we'll see how it looks moving forward. I think it's kind of not a point guard fit. It's just the big guy fit that you went with, making that big splash with Rudy Gobert with new ownership. They always got to make that big move, and that was their big move. We'll see, man. I'm very skeptical of this team. While many speculated in the offseason they'd be like a top 5 seed, I just didn't see it heading into this year. And currently, the 8th seed, we'll see Cat entering the fold very soon, supposedly. We'll see how it all comes together, but I think it's not just a Conley issue, it's a Gobert and Cat issue if they can figure out some way to make it work.
So I'm just speaking on just the trade. I don't think it was that bad as people are saying. I just think for a guy in D'Angelo, which they knew which he was probably going to leave, like you said, I think that he wouldn't have stayed. And with the whole cap thing, I don't think they would have been able to pay him as much as he wanted to. I think they're just kind of going it off of more of a Mike Conley is a better defender. I think D'Angelo is not the best defender, obviously. And he also doesn't need the ball, like you said. So I just think in a more of a fit, you give Ant, you give Cat, you give them more opportunities with the ball, more just kind of let them work. And you don't really need to, worry about, D'Angelo who needs the ball in his hand. And, he doesn't always need it, but, you can tell that he was starting to kind of, his numbers are starting to fall since he didn't have the ball as much. Now, I do I kind of agree with you. I think this is more of a, a Rudy Gobert kind of thing where they're just trying to make these trades to kind of help him out a little bit, in my opinion. I just think that D'Angelo just didn't really fit with that team. And I think Mike Conley, who is not really a scorer first guy, more of a defense, kind of just he'll play his role kind of guy. I think that's more of a more realistic fit for them. And I kind of liked it for them in that aspect. Making them a winner of the trade deadline, I wouldn't say that was really a win move because I still think that this team has a lot of holes and a lot of worries. So I like the trade for the Timberwolves overall to get a little bit, a point guard who actually fits. But I don't really think this makes the Timberwolves a winner at the trade deadline.
Moving on to another team that I can argue I disagree with. They have the Sixers as a loser at this deadline. Um, they moved off Matisse Thybulle, who was a sharpshooter against the Lakers the other night,
Oh yeah, he was.
and they were on the first night of a back-to-back. Looked at Matisse's stat line; he put up 2 points. So shout out to Matisse drilling 4 threes against us. But regardless, they moved off Matisse, who was kind of in trade rumors for a good amount of time. They moved off him for Jalen McDaniels, which I think is a pretty good upside pickup for them. I thought it was pretty underrated picking him up from Charlotte. Um, 3-point percentage isn't great, but I think he still has a lot of time to develop. In terms of Matisse, he's kind of had a couple of years um, of just trying to develop that 3-point shot. It hasn't necessarily came around, and that's why he's fell out of favor in the rotation. And he's had just a couple of years to prove himself. Didn't necessarily work out. You pick up a high upside kind of player who has the potential to be a pretty good 3-and-D wing for Philly, but currently he's not the greatest 3-point shooter, but I think the upside's definitely there. And in the article, they speculate that he may or may not crack the rotation during the playoffs. So I guess that's a pretty decent point. He's still a young player. Hasn't necessarily gotten any playoff experience, I don't think, besides the playing with Charlotte. So we'll see how that looks moving forward. He's got like 20 something games to kind of figure it out, see if he's going to be viable come playoff time. But I think the high upside's there, and we'll see how he looks moving forward. They also mentioned that finding a backup center for Joel Embiid has been a big issue, which I can agree with. Currently, they have Montrezl Harrell and Paul Reed, kind of those two guys that get very limited minutes for when Joel sits. So I can see the backup center being an issue, but then again, when it's playoff time, how vital is a backup center going to be when Joel's probably going to be playing like high 30s, low 40 minutes? So we'll see how that looks moving forward. They cited that the Nuggets getting Thomas Bryant, the Clippers getting Mason Plumlee, Celtics getting Mike Muscala. Those guys being backup centers, which, I mean, Thomas Bryant's not great defensively. Mason Plumlee's kind of solid, but nothing too crazy. And then Mike Muscala is just a stretch big, which defense probably isn't the greatest either. But I mean, if you're the Sixers, I like the high upside move with Jalen McDaniels, backup center. While it is an issue, I don't think it's going to be a glaring problem when it comes to playoff time. I think Joel's probably just going to be taking up a good amount of minutes, and I think if you stagger him and Harden, you have one of them on the floor while one's out, I think you'll be fine. Your roster is still good enough to manage when it comes to playoff time, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the backup center is going to be a glaring hole for them in the playoffs, but honestly, I don't necessarily agree with Philly being a loser. I do like Jalen McDaniels going over there, moving off Matisse. So
Yeah, I mean, I think this one is just a really kind of small trade, obviously. I don't really see this as a loss, to be honest, at all. It's just you're moving off Matisse, and then you're just getting a young guy who, can actually score and, has that upside. So I don't really see how you can kind of view this as a loss. I mean, I guess the whole backup center thing is kind of understandable, but I don't really see how that makes this original trade a loss. So I think that this was a good move for the Sixers, and I don't really think that they necessarily lost at all here at the trade deadline.
no, This one I wholeheartedly disagree with. Loser. Los Angeles Lakers.
Wait. How?
In a vacuum, exchanging Russell Westbrook and a top 4 protected first round pick for D'Lo, Malik Beasley, and Jared Vanderbilt is an obvious win. 3 solid contributors for 1 ticking time bomb is good business. Everything is relative and nothing actually exists in a vacuum. Just because you've been eating dirt for a couple months doesn't mean that you should throw a parade when leftover beef lo mein is suddenly for dinner every night. The Lakers are still not a contender, far from it. Their defense is still bad. D'Lo's contract year shot selection will yield at least 2 passive aggressive Instagram posts from LeBron James. Vanderbilt, awkward fit. Neither can shoot. Vando is totally ignored on the perimeter. Minutes available at backup center, but they address that. Mo Bamba complicates, but there's no, like, he doesn't move the needle. Lakers still have next to no chance at the title. They are not even a lock for the play-in. And like, what's the plan after their inevitable flame out? Resign D'Lo and Rui Hachimura to deals that would probably cost them upward to $100 million, or renounce Rui and Russell so they can sign Kyrie Irving. Nothing sturdy was executed at this deadline. The Lakers are a delicate sandcastle, and the tide is coming. Now, I would argue that this is really, really an awful take. I think, yes, you can argue that the play-in may not be guaranteed. You know, the Lakers really have to lock in the second half of the season after All-Star. They have a pretty tough schedule, which, yes, I agree with. It's going to be a tall hill to climb, and LeBron's definitely going to have to be that driving force for the Lakers moving forward. But I think you have to look at this move as a long-term fit. Yes, you have to sign D'Lo. I'm interested to see what he signs for. He's currently making 31 million, I believe. So I'm interested to see what his next contract looks like. But I think if we're really comparing D'Lo to Russell Westbrook, I think it's kind of obvious what choice you're going to make. One can shoot, one can't. And you have Malik Beasley, who's making like 16 million, I want to say. He's going to be a team option this year. I think that's kind of a no-brainer to keep him around. Jared Vanderbilt's making pennies on the dollar for what he does on the court. And his first game against the Warriors, he was just an absolute animal in limited minutes. And he's a fan favorite among every Laker fan. He's just a really, really great player, despite him not being able to shoot, as this article mentions. But I think it's just kind of silly. Yes, I understand that the play-in may not even be viable if you're not playing near perfect basketball, but you mentioned Mo Bamba. He may not move any needles. Say Mo Bamba just bursts into flames and he's just awful. Next year, he's unguaranteed or non-guaranteed. So it's not like you're stuck with him paying a lot of money. So you can move off him if necessary. Rui Hachimura, he's shown flashes. If you give him the ball in the mid-range, low post area, I think he's really good at creating his own shot. Saw it a couple times in Portland where he had Dame on him, just face up, shoots right over him. He's got a good mid-range game. We'll see how that three-point shot looks moving forward, but I don't think this is a thing that you can. This is a deadline you can complain about for the Lakers. Everybody was just doom and gloom that we're just stuck with Russ for the rest of the year. And to be able to move off a $47 million asset and be able to get D'Lo, Malik, and Jared Vanderbilt, throwing in Rui and Mo Bamba is just a huge win. and you got to factor in continuity. That's been a thing Laker fans have been screaming for. I know I have. It's just been constant turnover for the past couple of seasons, and this is a move that definitely helps that. Next year, you're probably looking at a good amount of these guys sticking around, um, just signing players around the edges, but you still have the key guys there, which I think is going to be a huge boost moving forward. So, just gonna have to wholeheartedly disagree with this one. If you're looking at it from a now perspective, yeah, it might be a little too late to address these issues, but I mean, better better late than never. I mean, to be able to do what you did at the deadline is just a huge win. I don't think there's much to complain about there, but yeah, I'm still a little hesitant on the plane. I don't know if I necessarily wholeheartedly believe in kind of growing on the fly and having a pretty hard schedule moving forward. But then again, I think moving forward, continuity is a big piece, and I think the Lakers accomplished that. And I just don't think that we're losers. I think most people, I think it's kind of consensus that the Lakers are kind of winners here at the deadline.
Yeah, now we're gonna be as nice as possible right now. Respectfully, I looked up the article. Michael Pina, I think that's how you say your name. Are you okay? That's all I have to say. Now, if you look at this as an actual like guy who just seemed like you just don't like the Lakers personally. Yes, we know that the bubble or not the wow, I said bubble. That the plan is not guaranteed. Like obviously any fan has that and we know that, oh, we just made these moves. Oh my god, we're automatically like contenders. But if you look at our team before the Rui trade and you look at the team, after everything now, do you really like tell yourself like which team do you think would have had a higher ceiling? Like you're telling me that this team doesn't have a higher ceiling than what we had just 2 weeks ago? Because you look at it and you have a guy in Westbrook who didn't want to be there, was told that was just a cancer in the locker room, $47 million that we were just going to lose. And we traded it away for 3 players that actually fit our team. With D'Lo, who may not be the best defender, but can score. Malik Beasley, who was draining every 3 in garbage time like 2 nights ago. And Vando, the Vandalorian, energy, can rebound, can defend. Looks like he actually wants to play basketball and is young. Then we trade for Davon Reed, which I mean, it's whatever. We got rid of Thomas Bryant, who was complaining. So I mean, whatever. I don't care. Thomas Bryant was terrible on defense, at least. And then you trade away Pat Bev, who, God bless, don't give Darvin Ham any more guards, which he still somehow finds a way to start 2-point guards. Can't wait to see the starting lineup tonight. I swear.
It's not going to change, but God bless.
But you get a guy in Mo Bamba who can kind of be that backup big when AD goes out. And, Wendy and Gabriel, I've watched him play the past couple of games. And let me just say, yikes. That's all I have to say. But you get a team that looks more complete, fits like the style that LeBron has always had when he wins championships. And you're going to tell me that we lost in the trade deadline? Like, that just makes absolutely zero sense. Now, I know the whole, we have to pay them, we have to re-sign them. It makes sense. But if you're looking at it, those are young pieces that we can re-sign. And then in 2-3 years, when LeBron retires, I assume that unless he becomes like a Tom Brady and plays until he's 45, like, that we're set. Like, we have our young pieces. We don't have any draft picks at the moment, so you can kind of build around these guys, go through free agency, go through, some of the second round picks that you have, and you can see what happens. So I just don't understand how you can even see this as a loss. I guess if they don't make the plan, yeah, but I mean, every Laker fan knew that going into it. Like, we have a hill to climb. The West is tough, so it's gonna be, kind of up to us to see if we really do it. But I just don't understand it here. I don't really understand how you could um say that this was a loss. Is this like I'm reading like because obviously you read it out and now I'm reading it for myself. Like this guy just looks like he hates the Lakers and like LeBron. To be honest, like that just looks like what it is. Because there's just no way like you're an NBA fan and you've watched LeBron and you've seen which type of teams he's won championships with, and you just say these moves aren't like gonna make this team better. Like there's no way you watched Russell Westbrook this year and last year and said this guy is gonna help him win a championship. So I think Rob's making moves that are for the future and for winning right now. So I just don't understand how you could, hate it.
And it's like, if you say they're losers, what moves do you want them to make? Do you want them to just stick it out with Russ? I mean, every Laker fan was crying just to not punt the season and at least try something. I know I've said it months ago. It doesn't hurt to try, Rob, and he finally did it. He's trying something, and wow, the first game in Golden State, it looked great. I loved it. Meanwhile, in Portland, you saw the ugly side, but I'm just gonna throw it up to the history books, just saying that it's a game where no matter how great you play, just that game was just not going to go your way. I mean, you have Dame just making just 30 footers constantly, and it's just like Darvin Ham. Yes, he's not a great coach, but if I'm game planning, I'm making Matisse Thybulle shoot every time, and God bless him, he drilled 4 threes on us, which I mean, they're NBA players at the end of the day. It's just the game plan I can get behind. You're doubling Dame and making the other guys beat you, and basically every other guy on the team beat you besides Cam Reddish. That was kind of the only guy that shot horrifically. But yeah, we'll see tonight. At the time of this recording, they take on the Pelicans, which must-win game. You got to head into the All-Star break on a high note, and hopefully LeBron plays, which people are kind of speculating he will, which I think LeBron will probably play. He's got some time to rest. Got a couple days before All-Star, and then after All-Star weekend, you can rest a couple more days as well. But yeah, got to win that game. We'll see how Mo Bamba looks in his first game. Obviously, this article's not projecting very highly, which I mean, I can see that. I think he's just going to be a limited big, who or a limited minutes kind of guy. Can shoot the hell out of the ball, 40% from three, but then again, it's pretty low volume, so we'll see how it looks. But definitely something I disagree with. And moving on, I'm just kind of just glancing through all the winners and losers he has. Pistons, he has as losers, which I mean, yeah, I can see that. You have Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren, Marvin Bagley, who I forgot was still there. And now you pick up another big in James Wiseman, which I like taking the flyer on your young team. Might as well take a gamble on a young guy who was the second overall pick at some point, which he's definitely not panned out at all. But I think taking a flyer on him in Detroit kind of makes sense. But then again, you have a logjam there. So it'll be interesting to see. Sadiq Bey was a very solid piece for them. I think Atlanta got a steal there. And another one I really disagree with. Put the winner. He gave Portland Trailblazers a winner. The moves that they made, I don't necessarily agree with. Josh Hart, they traded, which wasn't shooting the ball great, but he's still a really good wing. I believe he just dropped like 29 for the Knicks the other night. They got Cam Reddish, who is starting currently, but hasn't necessarily looked great. But then again, he's still a young player. He's got some games to play. They got Matisse Thybulle, which, I mean, sure, he's a good defensive wing to throw out next to Dame, but then again, the 3-point shooting is just a concern. But then you have the whole Gary Payne II stuff going on with all the medicals. And while you could argue they're good young pieces to add, it's the same old story of just what are we doing with Damian Lillard? It's just a team that's not going to go anywhere. And I just don't understand why you give them winners. And you just look at the whole output that the Blazers are trying to do. They're trying to put a winning roster around Dame, and this is just not a winning roster. It's just kind of Dame, Anthony, and just a bunch of young guys, and you have Nurkic in there. They're just kind of all over the place, and I don't really understand that.
It's a winning roster when you hit 23 threes.
I mean, yeah, if you're making 17 threes and a half, then maybe I'm not seeing anything. But I don't know what the Blazers are doing, man. It's just kind of just every year, it's just kind of the same thing. Just trying different pieces that don't necessarily work. And I think we're seeing that again, where they're just constantly trying different things, different iterations, different play styles around Dame. It's just none of it's working, and I don't necessarily know where they go from here because we all know Dame's loyal, so he's not going to do anything.
Yeah, it's. Oh, sorry, Vern.
Now go ahead. I was going to ask, what do you think about the Blazers?
Oh, I was about to go into that. It's just like I've said for I feel like months now. It's just this team doesn't make sense. It doesn't compute with. I feel like the owners and the general managers. I just don't understand what they're trying to accomplish. Like I look at this team and I just don't see even a play-in team. Now, yes, they did just beat the Lakers, so they're just next up. But let's be honest, like Dame ain't dropping 40 against any other team that's if they're the Lakers, he's dropping 40. If they're not, he ain't dropping squat. So I look at this roster up and down, and their forwards to me look weak. I mean, I just don't like. I feel like their forward depth really isn't there. They have like a lot of forwards. Like you have Kevin Knox, Nasir Little. I mean, Jeremy Grant's still there, but and then you have Reddish and Thibault, and I just don't. Excuse me, but I just don't think that those are like the craziest of guys that really set yourself as this is a championship level team.
Mm-hmm.
They're just a bunch of kind of washed up. I don't want to say washed up because they're in the NBA. They're a bunch of like guys who have been on other teams and they just haven't really found success, and now they're kind of bouncing from team to team here. I still like Cam Reddish. I want to believe in him to be something in the league and kind of come up. But you look at it, you still have Lillard, Simons, Nurkic, and Grant, and I like those four, but I don't see that their moves really gave them extra depth. I mean, Thibault's not going to score. Reddish is still, hopefully he ever gets consistent minutes, and just I look at the rest of them and I just don't really see a team that should really win a lot. So the Blazers attempted it. They made some moves that they thought would be good. So we'll see how they play it out. But I just think that they're just going in circles at this point.
Touching on the Brooklyn Nets, I've been watching Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, the new guys, Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith. I gotta say, this team is really intriguing to watch. I kind of mentioned that they don't have that solidified guy that they can kind of look at like the franchise builder moving forward. But I just think they gotta address the wings because they have so many wings. But with the product they have now, I think Mikal Bridges has looked really good. That first game against Philly was really entertaining to watch. Him and Cam Johnson showed flashes. I think those are two guys you can definitely get excited about. While they're, I don't know if this is a hot take, I don't think they're necessarily as fun as like the D'Lo Nets. But I think they're definitely heading in the right direction. I like Mikal Bridges. I like Cam Johnson. I like Dorian Finney-Smith. I like Dinwiddie. While they're still young, they're still competitive. They lost that heartbreaker against Philly, but definitely heading in the right direction. I think just when you look at all they went through, the deadline in a span of a week, just moving off two of their best players and being able to just have fun, watch games without having to worry about Kevin Durant being injured, just like the constant high stakes, Kyrie with all his off the court drama, and just I think if you're a Nets fan, you gotta love it. I think just being able to watch exciting basketball just with no expectations, no drama. Even though he had championship aspirations, it definitely didn't pan out by any means. But I think I'm interested to see how the Nets do moving forward. I'm interested to see what they do in the offseason, see if they address any of the wings that they have, because I'm sure they can get something for like they traded a first for Royce O'Neal. So we'll see how they can flip him if they decide to move him. So we'll see how that looks moving forward. They got Joe Harris coming off the books, I believe. I think he's expiring. So we'll see how the Nets look moving forward. One thing I will say that is definitely going to hurt him is Ben Simmons. That guy is just really disappointing, and dare I say it's time to give it up. Who knows? It's just similar to the Westbrook situation. You're just paying a guy so much money, and he can't even start on the Brooklyn Nets team that's blowing it up, and it's just kind of disappointing. Maybe he can show some flashes, but it's we're over the halfway mark. There's like 20 something games left, and it's just very disappointing, man. Ben Simmons just had people were kind of holding out hope. I know I was. It was kind of like the defensive potential that kind of made us hold on, and just Kevin Durant and Kyrie would maybe get something out of him. But yeah, it's not looking pretty, man. And his contract's going to continue to get more ugly. I think it gets up to the 40s towards the end of his contract. But overall, not looking pretty for Ben Simmons. Don't know what the hell is going to happen with him moving forward. But that's the only negative that the Nets have looming over them. But I think they definitely got a lot of promise with Mikal and Cam Johnson. I think those are two really good players that they can look at every game and just be proud of.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree. I really liked what they got for um, giving away Durant. Obviously, stocking up on more picks always helps, and you just look at those two, and I think that those are two solid building blocks. You have Cam Thomas still, who's another guy who you could build around, and it was all about just kind of getting rid of the toxicity in that locker room with the KD and Kyrie situation. And I think that's exactly what they've done. They've lost their past two, I'm pretty sure, against the Sixers and Knicks, so it's not looking like um, they haven't won much since that trade. But I do think that this team still makes the play-in, and which will be very promising. We'll have to see what happens, but they have I feel like good depth in the forward position. Um, their centers are looking kind of rough with Nick Claxton
Yeah.
basically being the only one, but um, I still think that this team has a lot of potential in the future, and I'm really excited to see what they can do moving forward. And I think it's just so much pressure lifted off the front office and the fan base and everyone just to get Katie and Kyrie away from the team. Not saying that they're bad in their new teams, but I think everyone could see that both those guys were kind of um, making it a little bit harder just to focus on basketball. So really excited for the Nets. Really excited to see what they can do in the coming weeks. So yeah,
Yeah, we're coming up on time here just to kind of summarize, they have obviously the Suns as winners. Because you got arguably a top 5, top 10 player, and Kevin Durant that definitely opens up your championship ceiling again. Has the Dallas Mavericks as losers, which again, another disagreement. Which yes, you probably should have made more moves after the Kyrie deal just because of defense. But I think adding a guy like Kyrie with Luka is definitely a step in the right direction. They definitely have some questions to answer in the off season, but I think just off the move itself of getting Kyrie definitely just raises your ceiling. And they've looked great so far, both dropping 30 against the Timberwolves. Fortunately, in a loss, but yeah, they've definitely looked good. But the Clippers, another winner as well, getting Bones, Mason Plumlee, Eric Gordon. They just played their first games against the Warriors. Bones Highland, Eric Gordon didn't shoot the greatest, but I think on paper, and they're definitely going to be key pieces moving forward. Mason Plumlee looks solid. He's just a solid backup big for Zoo. They kind of didn't have that before, but getting off Luke Kennard, who signed that big contract a couple years back that people didn't really understand. Losing John Wall is not that big of a deal, and losing Reggie Jackson, well, Clipper fans love him. Wasn't necessarily having the greatest year, but those are kind of just the final points of this article. So that will do it for this episode. Thank you for listening. Greatly appreciate it. Feel free to check us out on our YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Been active on all those, posting more clips, so feel free to check us out there. If you're new, we go live every Friday from 4 to 5. So yeah, that will do it for this episode, and we will see you guys next time. See ya.